Hello, everyone. Hi. I am here to just talk about AI and product management. I think this is one of those things that everybody loves to have in their product. I mean, it's everywhere. AI is just everywhere from tech. They're talking about it, putting in clean tech, putting it in prop tech, they're putting it in every other industry out there, basically, because it is a powerful tool. But because it's so um because it's so prominent, and yet it almost feels like it just came out of nowhere. I don't know if you feel that, but I found that with AI, especially last year, it kind of just came at you like a punch out of nowhere. And now everybody's kind of scrambling to kind of make sure that people know about it, or they integrate it with their organizations, with their product, and so forth. And I find that it's not that it wasn't, um, and now looking back at it, it's not that this is all new or this is something that people should have known. Um, People should have known this a long time ago, especially since it was being thought up and talked about maybe 10 years ago with just even the rise of Zapier, it's automation, even the rise of analytics, predictive analytics, that's part of these things. So I think Gen AI is what really changed the game, because that's kind of like new content being generated and people just thinking about that as kind of like as the powerful world and powerful word that most people are saying, yep, see, I'm right because look at what ChatGPT says. Um, so that's what I've been looking at this past few weeks, is this whole what is AI and why that. And I'm starting to dive into it. I've done basics, as you can, I've done basics around it, the timeline as to how things have gotten, as to where we are right now. But I've also wanted to deep dive into certain things that I think more people should learn more about, especially as we are going to integrate AI into our lives. And so that's what I'm going to do for this video. And I think one of the big issues I really want to talk about to you is about, and one of the biggest issues I really want to talk to you about is AI biases more than anything. And I decided to create a um, a presentation a lot easier for me and for you to understand what I'm coming from. Um, but I'm coming from a way where it's just, well, why do AI have biases, and how it's actually making it really difficult for you as an organization to, how is it making it, or will make it difficult for you as an organization, um, if you find that there are biases in your data and using AI to support your product. So one of those things I want to talk about is, well, before anything else, I should probably introduce who I am and why am I talking about this, and why now, out of anything, why now? And from there, I want to talk about what even is AI biases, what happens to it, and why it happens in real life, and how does it come about? And then lately after that, I want to show where these biases are affecting real people in real time right now. And chances are it's quite um, subtle right now as to where people being hit by these biases, but there have been reports about it. And I now wouldn't be surprised if there would be more in the future as well. And of course, what matters to you, because why would I be talking about something that doesn't really matter to people? More than that, though, I want to talk about it in a way that, assuming, okay, we know AI is bad for ethical reasons, or AI biases is bad for ethical reasons, and it's discriminating of groups, it's discriminating of this. Okay, that's fine. Like, we all can agree with that, I hope. But from what it is today, and the people that I've met and the people online, nobody cares about it, unfortunately, until it starts hitting their pockets. And so I actually really want to talk about it in a way that why it matters to you, in terms of you losing out on money. Not that I don't think the ethical reason is a bad reason. It's just I find that there are more people who actually tune in on it once they find out how it affects them, even though it technically benefits them in the short term, but how they would lose money in the long term. And the last part there is just from a product management point of view, I would love to suggest ways for you to improve your product and understand that you don't have to be disempowered from it at all. So let's just dive in. So this is me. This is me. Hi. Um, this is my story so far. I wouldn't say I'm your typical product manager, and it took me a while to really like admit that because I would like to be as boring as possible. However, I did not have a linear path getting here. I've decided um, right out the get-go, after finishing my master's at U of T, I've been scouted to work for the government, and I've delivered, white label platforms for Ministry of Education. And then after that, I was able to get recruited for a big uh, private company that works to create those government transit 511 transit management systems. And so I was there. So I've been able to I started with working from big organizations. To be perfectly honest, I got bored with it and I really wanted a product management role. And during that time in 2015 or 2017, there's this whole like idealized version of what startups are. Rock star, being like this whole like rock star unicorn, which I know now is funny, but before I was really idealizing this whole like startup lifestyle. And so I really wanted to try that out. And I did. So I moved across the globe. I got a good job starting as a sole product manager in a startup in the UK, where I worked at help create this real estate marketplace, which is exactly what you want, renting out spaces, which is exactly what is needed during the height of COVID, or when COVID started. So that's a really interesting time. And then from there, I was able to find a role back in North America, where I got a job in the US as a senior technical product manager, where I also ended up as a director of product management to deliver and create this AI powered system that's property management tool for day-to-day managers using like that needs to manage their space. So our specialization was in self-storage. So how would operations manage to have this how would they have a property tech that has the 3D and has the AI search bar and all these smart automation that can integrate with third-party platforms like how Canva is or Shopify. So that has been my role so far. And in each of my job, I got burned out. And so that was my 3 strikes and a reset. And that's when I decided to take a step back, have a career break for a bit, and where I was playing too much Coral Island or Stardew Valley beforehand. And I thought maybe I should just be a farmer. And I decided that's not the right choice for me after trying to garden in a Buddhist retreat. So I realized, nope, software and product management is actually where I want to be. But now that I'm back, I wanted to be more intentional with what I'm doing. I want to build AI in a way that, or I want to build a software where in a way that makes more sense to what I think is happening around there. With more human intention, especially since I actually did graduate with sociology. I love to bridge those the technology and kind of make it more accessible to the general public, but also from my experience building software, actually make it practical for you to build those things that not only generates revenue for you, but actually makes sense for people to have. And so over the past few months and the next few months and next few years, really, I believe that I'm going to be here and I'm going to be learning a lot of things. I'm going to be sharing that. And I hope to connect with people who are also in the same mindset. And I'd love to have the opportunity to meet more people or meet more like-minded people and be in communities like this. So yeah, so I'm putting myself out there to also meet you guys. Okay, so let's go back to our original thought. What is AI and what is AI biases and how do they happen? Well, AI biases are just really what happens when you put something out there and you utilize this algorithm and it provides you a solution that leans over one direction over the other. And usually it's because there is usually there's a main reason for that actually. The main reason is like why do AI biases happen is, well, two things. There's imbalanced training data, and everybody has biases. Everybody has their own bias. So you have to think about AI as this sort of neutral sponge, as they like to say it, a neutral sponge that is, it's so powerful and it's so neutral, but it can't really differentiate between good or evil. It doesn't really have a way to be meta as much as it just trains it trains it's trained to learn based on a lot of data and tons of it, trillions, like not even like gigabyte or like the biggest um amount of data that you can, and it can train itself, but it doesn't change the fact that it's trained initially from a set of data that it can do. So what happens is that if you have an imbalanced training data, there's usually a bias around what happens. So, for example, if you lack diversity, if you lack representation of a particular group, minority, of whoever in that data set, then that means that the AI would know certain things about a majority group, but less things over the other. So it's going to provide this supposedly blueprint for everyone, but honestly, it just really caters for one group instead of the rest. So that's kind of what happens when you train an AI in a data set that's very limited. And of course, human biases happens as well. It could be saying that, and this is a bit trickier, I think, mainly because, how do you track these biases? Like there's, it's everywhere. It's often subconscious, and there's also explicit and implicit biases, right? So one is more like you don't even know that you're doing it, where it's just like, oh yeah, I guess we have all these people that came up to us to. So for example, if you're even if you're a scientist, for example, and you need particular sample of population, but you're only ever if you don't if you don't have due diligence, it's going to be really hard for you to get a sample for pretty much everybody. Chances are, so if you're working in a university um, and you're working on a project, most of the time, the people who's going to come to you are university students. So you don't have the population of the people outside of the university. So there is that bias there. Um, and then, of course, the explicit one, which can also be a little bit tricky, but it's saying like it's more pedantic than anything. Mainly because it's the one that talks about, oh, it's a high risk group. So it's you being it's about not being neutral in terms of the words that you choose for particular people. So those are the biases that happens, and then you train the AI about it, and then that's how they know things. So that's kind of how it starts, right? Now, how does it actually affect people so far? Um, there's this NIH scientific article, really, it's that shows how there's biases right now in terms of healthcare. So there's biases against black minority groups, where because they never had the data for them or particular sample groups in, let's say, scientific experiments, like what I was saying about earlier. Then they don't know if a particular if a particular equipment is set for them. So, for example, this example here is this pulse oximeters overestimate oxygen levels in Black patients, leading to undefeated hypothermia. I mean, one of the other things is well-known cases for that as well is like people with red hair actually need more anesthesia, but they don't know that until later on, once they finally got more data. But how many people didn't have that, or didn't have that knowledge and had to suffer through that? We don't know. And it's not just minority groups. Well, everything's gonna be minority groups. It could just be like, one of the things is sleep scoring algorithm right here. It's trained on young, healthy individuals. So what about the people who actually need who actually are struggling with sleep, who aren't really healthy, or aren't young anymore? So there are, once you start training data of a particular data set that's limited, you don't actually help people in the future, or you're only limited to that set of people. It's actually really hard for you to extend that to other people. It's the same thing as that. I don't know, it was a ChatGPT or something else, but it was an algorithm to help predict the stock market. But it was trained on the data based on COVID, so it just did not do well, specifically mainly because it was expecting the data. It was predicting based on the COVID data, and it's not just healthcare, as many hiring apps have shown problems with it. One was Amazon, where their AI tools started discriminating against women, because they're trained on data that's mostly men, right? And so for some reason, this AI tool just sees like, oh, women's chess club, and then they would start penalizing these women based off that. And that's just one of these things that happens in real life, based on just what happened, based on the data, based on the fact that it was just trained wrong, or it's just trained with very limited set of data. And that's kind of what I want to show people. It's just like, there's AI is very powerful, and for the most part, it's probably going to help you, but also understand that there are limitations around it. Now, why should you care? I'm going to give this note to those people who, aside from the ones who just like, no, it's bad. This is AI biases is, it encourages discrimination, it encourages segregation, it encourages all these things, right? But what about those people who are benefiting from this? Because we can always make a case it's bad. But what about those who are actually benefiting from it? Because they're the ones that's getting, the data. They're the ones that's being given priority right now, right? So what about those? What about you? What about you who is benefiting from the privilege or from this data? Well, one thing is eventually you'll kind of lose out at the long term. If we're just talking purely revenue, purely your money, how are you going to lose your money in the long term when you're benefiting it from the short term? First, you're going to lose top talent. With Amazon or Hire, I think HireVue, they've had that problem where they discriminate against women, but they've also discriminated against people who just don't have that suggested culture or suggested or um that sort of encourage way of talking, or the ones, or if they have ADHD or if they have any other sort of things that aren't in the mainstream in terms of what you would like as a talent, that's the trained data, then you lose out on diversity. You lose out on people that would help you in your company. I mean, one of the things is from just McKinsey here is just saying like, well, if you have gender diversity in executive teams, you're 21% more likely to outperform those who don't, and 27% to have more likely value creation than those without. Same with group diversity. It's just looking back, it was 31% of would outperform those without diversity itself. Mainly because if you have diversity, chances are there's groups of people that just suddenly opens up for you to get business with. So that's something that you've already missed out on by just wanting or just looking at a specific set of people that is not, it's just looking at like that specific set of people and just not talking about the biases around it. And I mean, once you find out as well, you're going to get PR disasters. I mean, Microsoft had an AI bot a long, long time ago, but you don't remember that. Nobody remembers that. They've tried to scrub that as much as possible. I think this was back in 2016 or 2018 when they even launched this AI bot. But because it was trained on, online communities, it just started spewing racist, sexist, offensive tweets. And that's kind of one of those things that you have to understand is you can benefit now, but eventually, if you're caught, your reputation is going to suffer from it. And the other one too is, aside from suffering from it, your legal team is going to be absolutely inundated with a lot of these cases and very busy. So you'll be busy paying your legal team in a lot of ways when it comes to you finding out if your product has been found out with lots of biases. And I mean, one of those things is Facebook ads. Facebook ads had that problem where they discriminate against certain minority groups from seeing certain housing. And That, aside from the other Cambridge Analytica stuff, they ended up having to pay at least $5 million to settle several lawsuits just because um, they're they were practicing things that weren't necessarily, I guess, an ethical manner. And so I'm just saying, this is, as much as I'm trying my best to not make it about ethics and not making about what's right for the world, um, which is really hard. It's really hard because eventually you have to understand that correct choices is probably there for a reason. And if we're trying to specifically just talk about revenue, you're still gonna have to understand that it's all gonna come up come up to bite you later on. So that is why I think you should care. And if you're a product manager or someone who builds these products, it might be worthwhile for you to understand that even if it's giving you lots of revenue now, um, it might be a problem in the future. So that's kind of where I'm at there. And so I actually want to talk about it as a product manager as well, because there are ways to reduce this. And the reason why I've just, I don't want to make this, I don't want to make this a doom and gloom sort of video. This isn't supposed to be a doom and gloom for you. I'm just trying to raise an issue that is a problem. And I am trying to provide you a reason as to why you should probably take it more seriously than most people are currently in this environment. And and I want to encourage you to kind of fix it before it becomes a problem, especially if you're already building an AI product yourself. I mean, just think about it. 1 in 4 startups right now are AI startups. I it's ridiculous. I think it was I it's a ridiculous number. I think pretty much everything that's happening right now is a startup. It is a startup company, right? So when you think about it that way, you want to make sure that you can build a product that up is sustainable in the future as it is today. Saying that, saying that, I will concede, especially as someone who worked in a startup, um, when you work in a startup, I understand how overwhelming it is, especially when you're trying to just get out the door. You're trying to go to market as soon as possible and generate revenue as soon as possible. And suddenly now we're going to add even more process and more features that isn't really going to generate you the revenue today. I get it. I get it. You are overwhelmed. There are a lot of things that needs to happen and you haven't proven and you need to sell. And that's the whole point. And I'm saying this as someone who totally understands that this cannot be done immediately, but that's why I kind of want to give you the chance to also think about it in a way where, well, how about you can do it when you can? And there are ways to really kind of just put it in as like ways to help you reduce these AI biases immediately. So let's just talk about that. Let's just deal with that. You don't have to put everything in. You just have to think about it in a way um, where you know that eventually later on. So, for example, if you're in AI healthcare, and if it's a product for healthcare, I mean, and you're using AI for it, fine. You can you can probably only serve this many groups, and then you can get money from that. Perfectly fine. But if you want to expand, you're gonna have a hard time, mainly because you don't have the diverse data set that you need. So one of the things what we're just going to do is prepare for when you actually can do it. Um, so one of those things is, well, if the problem or the original problem is the fact that you have a problem, is that your data set is poor and limited, then build a diverse data set and make sure that it's representative of the people that you need. You can do that by, well, it depends if you're using a third party AI or not, but um, at the same time, let's say that you are building your own and you're only using part of that AI, a third party for that AI data set to integrate with your product. Well, you can build your own customized dashboard for it to kind of just show you, or at least um, to kind of like show you the tags, visualize the diversity of those tags and those values for a particular customer, particular group of people, because those are the things that the AI is going to be looking for and training itself on. So if you can see it immediately that you're lacking certain representation, you can easily see that if you have a dashboard for it, or have a data analytics team take a look at it and see what's missing. Two very, very simple approach. Well, one's more simpler than the other. The other one's actually more sustainable. Dashboard's more sustainable in the future. Simple approach is one go for now is a data analytics team just doing it for you. And another one is implementation bias detection or mitigation tools, right? What does this all mean? It's so big. The words are so big, but really it just means that when you're going to deploy, before deployment, that software development lifecycle that you're in, you find the right tickets to have for your sprint. People build it, QA, deploy, very simple. Of course, there's many different organizations have different things, but for the most part, that's the big ones. Have a way to check the biases as a part of that pipeline. It doesn't have to be that big. It could just be part of QA. It could be part of a UAT, for example, or user acceptance testing, or it could be part of like a smoke test. It could be part of one of those things. The whole point is just for you to flag anything that is suspicious in terms of biases. And honestly, by doing this, you might actually flag more things than you think. Now, I'm talking about as if it's easy. It is easier to do this when you're in a company with a lot more teams and a lot more revenue, and there's a lot more, yes, there's a lot more revenue available for you to use, and things like that. It is a lot harder to do this in a startup. You are stretched thin. Chances are you don't have a data analytics team. You don't have particular people to do it in. So I do think that there are things online that you can integrate as part of software, automated testing that you can integrate. So it doesn't have to be a particular process for someone to really do it. It's just another checklist, just another check for the software team. It can be done. Another one is, this one is just more, is actually works with hallucinations as well. But let's say you've asked ChatGPT something or asked your AI product something. If it can actually provide a confidence score as to how confident they are with generating an answer for you. So let's say you ask a question, if would this person have how likely is this person hypothermia or whatever. I mean, and your AI is about is to it's a probably there shouldn't be necessarily an AI that does that, but let's just say your product is to um it's not necessarily to diagnose as much as it is to suggest what sort of disease that person has. It might be worthwhile to have a confidence interval around it, mainly because you definitely want to avoid lawsuits, and you want to avoid the idea that um, that people put so much trust and faith on your product that if and probably when your AI product actually makes a mistake that is quite a gr- grief, quite a big mistake, really, that can cost lives. You really want to show that there is a confidence meter, and this is really for legal and regulations at this point. There's two ways to look at this, by the way. One is just, well, I don't want to show how confident what the confidence score is, mainly because well, uh, we might lose some customers if most of the time the confidence score is 70%, 60, 70%. We might lose customers for those who don't show that. But at the same time, on the legal side of it, it's just, well, they cannot sue us because if it's 70%, then, well, you should talk to other people more who are more trained to diagnose you. So I would say this can be talked about more, but design for transparency and explainability is a game changer if you do know how to do it right. Because also, if you say it's 70%, some people might actually like that too. Like they'd understand the cost and implications of it, and they know that to trust you more because they can't understand whether the other competition is truthful or not. So think about it that way. And going kind of on top of it is like add human oversight for high stake decisions. So if it's 70% and they're diagnosing you with something, you might want to have a doctor or at least a nurse practitioner at the end of that saying that, yep, this is about true. Nah, I would prescribe you this drug at the end, because you don't want to be, as much as I want to emphasize, you don't want to be legally um, it's a big liability. It's a legal liability if your AI starts sprouting up things that is made up or is trained on a particular limited data set that doesn't actually subscribe or doesn't actually expand to the ones who are asking you right now or who are your users at the moment. So that's my 2 cents on that. And yeah, I'd love to just it's actually such an amazing um just talking about this is something that is very interesting. And yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. It's like what you think AI is and what you think what would work for you in the future and what wouldn't. Is this something that you think is AI? So my question, I think, for you is like, do you think AI biases is worthwhile to explore? Because as you can see, it's not. It might even stop you from um, generating revenue right now. If you actually do it right, it might. It might just. It will. It will be like more effort for you. And is it worth it? Is it worth it for you to do that? And that is probably, I would like to argue, it is worth it in the future. A pragmatic side of me also knows that a lot of people can't afford it. because it's a race. A lot of startups, they're trying to get revenue as soon as possible, and it's a race. And if this is gonna, um, this is going to slow you down from that race, and making sure that your AI is trained properly is gonna block you from generating revenue, then how then what are ways in order for you to make sure that you don't lose that race? Because I think everybody I would like to think about is we would benefit from more training from AI that's actually a lot more um, capable and powerful, and can be expansive to pretty much every demographic out there. However, that's not the reality of things. And as much as I would my I would love to just subscribe to that whole like, yeah, but this is the right thing to do, right? Like this is uh we should be more responsible, which is true. We should be more responsible um as to how society is going to work in the future. As much as I love to subscribe to that, I get it. I understand. Like it's so difficult to do that when you have so much pressure around you to just make money. So, yeah, I'd love to hear from you. Like, what do you think about that? Because it's not an easy discussion. It's not an easy debate, and yeah. But I'm here to just talk to you about it. So I hope you enjoy it, and I really want to connect with those. I really hope it resonated to some of you, to many of you, if I could. But and I'd love to connect with those who really care about this issue, because I really am interested to hear more about this. And yeah, and anyways, I will do another one of these, but it's would be for hallucinations. I have done many guides already on AI for product managers and AI and specifically around this topic. There's a Substack article that is a lot more comprehensive as to what I've already discussed here um, in terms of the solutions and the reality of it all. But yeah, I would love to hear from you and love to see you again.